Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of I Heard That. This is the unofficial Checks and Balances show for the Herd with Colin Cowherd. I'm a huge fan of Colin Cowherd, but since he's moved to the new place, some of his opinions have gone a little bit, in his words, wackadoo. I grade his takes between thumbs up, that's vintage Herd, and thumbs down, that's coastal Colin. I don't really like coastal Colin takes so much. But this episode is about the Washington Redskins. What should they do with the number 2 overall pick? I believe Kiper came out of ESPN, and then, of course, Colin Cowherd talked about this last week. He said, look, at the number 2 pick, should the Washington Redskins investigate drafting Tua? The answer is yes. So Colin and so Mel Kiper say, and I say, hell yes. I grade this take as a vintage Colin take. Now, will the Washington Redskins do it? I don't know. And I also think, by the way, that the Washington Redskins should investigate trading the pick to somebody who wants to come up and take Tua. If the Redskins don't want to do it, somebody wants that pick, right? Number one's probably going to be Burrow, right? About 99.9% sure it's going to be Burrow, which means Tua drops to number 2. There are going to be teams that want him. Why do I think Washington should take him, and why do I think that they probably won't? Here's why I think they should. The game is gravitating more towards quarterbacks. First of all, a young quarterback, first-round quarterback that you can extend at low money over 5 years. That's generally how you open a championship window, right? Tom Brady is the antithesis of that argument, but remember, Tom Brady for years had been taking less money, so his cap hit at the quarterback position was low. Then you got guys like Jared Goff, who lost in the Super Bowl, Wentz, who, of course, Foles ended up being in the Super Bowl. You got last year Patrick Mahomes, Jimmy Garoppolo, who was extended, but he has a reasonable cap hit number. The mold these days is more about lower cap hit for quarterback, so that you can help build the rest of the team. Now, the Washington Redskins already have a rookie in Dwayne Haskins. I didn't like the pick last year for Washington. I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think, first of all, Gruden, of course, was let go last year, Jay Gruden. The Grudens do not like young quarterbacks. They don't generally like their quarterbacks, period. They're kind of like a disapproving father in that way. They just never like any quarterback. I think the one quarterback that John Gruden, liked was Rich Gannon in Oakland way back when, and Rich Gannon, he was like 41 years old. They just don't like young quarterbacks. Seriously, I mean, look across the board. They just don't, okay? Now, of course, Gruden's gone. Rivera's in there, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, Haskins, I didn't like it. He's immobile. He didn't have a long, storied, starting tradition. These quarterbacks that start 1 year at a big school, I'm always a little hesitant on because they've never really had to win games by themselves. Their talent usually helps. One season starting, then there's talk about maturity issues, work ethic. That's a concern because quarterback is like the one position where if you're going to have work ethic, you need to be in the film room studying. That's a pure work position. You need to be there. So I don't love it. I didn't love the pick. Now, what does Tua bring them? It looks like his medical stuff is cleared, so there's not a lot of concern there. Again, we were talking about, quarterbacks for good colleges. Certainly Alabama is one of the best, but he started there for a long time. His arm, I don't really know, but his mobility is something that is going to be able to be used as a tool. And we saw it actually in Washington with RG3 his first year before his knee crumbled on him in that playoff game. And by the way, they were going to beat the Seattle Seahawks this year. Get over it. They were up 14-0 and dominating that game before his knee got shredded. But the idea of drafting Tua, I think it's a good one. I think it's something they should consider. I think it will help the rest of their offense to have a mobile quarterback. Haskins is going to be kind of a pocket passer. I look at Haskins, honestly, as a poor man's Jameis Winston, and that is not a compliment. Does he have room to grow? Yes, but he's so raw. They really need to give him some time, a long time on the bench. Otherwise, they're going to end up screwing his career. We'll see what happens with the new offense there. Now, why do I think they're not going to draft Tua, realistically? One, yes, they did. They drafted Dwayne Haskins last year, but don't remember there's a personal link with Dan Snyder and Dwayne Haskins, and that's why they drafted him last year to begin with. I guess Haskins went to school, like high school, with Snyder's son or something like that. They're not going to draft. They're not going to draft him based on that alone. But on top of that, defensive coordinators, and I don't necessarily put Rivera and Del Rio into this, and when I say coordinators, I should say defensive coaches. I don't necessarily put them into this mold, but a lot of defensive coaches out there like to try to win games 3-0, or 3-2, or 6-3, or 9-6, or 9-7, or whatever the case is, right? They think that their defense is going to be able to shut people down. Rivera I like, and Del Rio I like because in their history of coaching, when Del Rio was a head coach, most recently in Oakland, and Rivera, had a couple really good years where the Carolina Panthers offense was good. They will put points up, and they're happy to try to put points up. But I think what they want, being two defensive guys and Rivera effectively being the general manager of this organization now, I think what they're going to do is take a long, hard look at Chase Young. And I think that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to stay at that pick, and they're going to take Chase Young. And I can't argue too much against that. Chase Young is probably the consensus best prospect in this draft. Now, obviously, quarterbacks are always at a premium, and of course, the Cincinnati Bengals will probably take Burrow. But Chase Young is the consensus best player in this draft. If you look, everybody says he's a once in a lifetime talent. He's an edge rusher. In a scheme that's going to probably be more 4-3 than 3-4 with Ron Rivera and Del Rio, having that edge rusher, whether it's playing at defensive end or popping him out to linebacker or something like that, it makes a big difference. And I think Washington, they already have some good tools on this defensive line. But adding Chase Young could make this a very, very good team. And we saw with San Francisco how much they changed when they added Nick Bosa last year to an already good defensive line. Do I call Washington good? No. Do I think Washington is going to be at that level? No. But I do think that Chase Young could give that kind of lift to a defensive line that already has some pieces on it. And when your defensive line can get a pass rush with 4, it makes coverage easier. You start to force more turnovers, certainly sack fumbles, but also errant passes, rushed throws, all those things. So I do think Chase Young is going to be the pick here, but I absolutely agree that the Washington Redskins should investigate and maybe even take Tua. I think if it were me, gosh, I'm not the GM here, and I don't relish this decision. I think if I'm Washington, I'd probably try to snooker somebody and trade back. But there's really no wrong decision here. Tua, Chase Young, or a trade back. I think all of these will help the team, but I think they'll stay and take Chase Young, and we'll get to watch Chase Young develop into one of the best pass rushers in the league under the tutelage of Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio. And hopefully Washington can figure out quarterback, because I'm sorry to say I do not think Dwayne Haskins is it. But if Washington can get that defense going, if they can get the run game going, and maybe get a quarterback down the line, hey, maybe Carolina won't like Cam Newton, and they can bring Cam Newton over there and see what happens there. And I don't think Cam Newton's a worse passer by any stretch than Dwayne Haskins. So there you go. There's my take on Colin's take. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and catch us on another video soon. Thanks, everyone.